What if the most repulsive feeling in your body is actually one of your greatest protectors? Hi, I'm Umar. I'm your host for the Emotional Literacy Unlocked series. I'm a classically trained shaman. I train shamans internationally, and today we are diving into one of the most misunderstood emotions in the whole series: disgust.
Ugh. Oh. Ugh.
Let's start with the energetics. Disgust has a very specific movement in the body. It pulls something out of your system with a twisting, spiraling motion. Like it grabs down to your core and wrings something out of you. And that's exactly why we can physically vomit when we feel deeply disgusted. The body is doing what the emotion is asking it to do. Get this out of me. And that is not a malfunction, that is intelligence. Disgust gives us very precise information. Something has entered my system that does not belong here, and it could harm me. I want to make a case for disgust today, not as a negative emotion to fight down or suppress, but as a cleanser, a protector, something we should allow and even encourage when it arises. When disgust shows up, it's your system saying, it's too foreign, it's too misaligned, too harmful, we want it out. That is a gift. The problem is, most of us have learned to swallow disgust, to push it down, to digest things that our soul is actively rejecting. And that, over time, makes us sick. Now I want to be honest with you, because I always am. There is a shadow side to disgust, and I know it personally. When I was young, I was bulimic. I felt disgust towards a lot of things, and I vomited a lot of things out of me. And what I learned from that experience is just saying yes to disgust and following it blindly is not the solution. If we stay with disgust without inquiring deeper, we can begin to narrow our world. We become disgusted by more and more things. The list of what we can tolerate gets smaller and smaller, and behind this narrowing is often unresolved trauma or a deep disconnection from ourselves. So, the first step is to acknowledge the disgust, to go with it in the moment, and then to sit with it, to ask, what is it that my system is not allowing, and why? Disgust is deeply connected to our boundaries. It shows us what we are not willing to let into our system, our body, our energy field, our life. Take a simple example. Someone throws their sexual energy at you in a way that you haven't consented to. A healthy disgust response is completely appropriate here. Your system is saying, this does not belong here. Or take something more complex, like seeing a carcass on the side of the road. Even people who eat meat can feel disgusted by that. Why? Because many of us have split apart the reality of death from the act of eating meat. We've disconnected the living being from what ends up on your plate. And when that split is confronted, disgust arises. Not because something is wrong with you, but because your system is not yet at peace with the concept of death. Disgust shows us there is something here I have not yet integrated, something I need to look at more closely. Now, let's go a little deeper, because this is where it gets really interesting for those of you who have been following the series. In traditional Chinese medicine, disgust, like sadness, is connected to the lungs. We talked about sadness and the lungs in earlier videos. The lungs in TCM are the organ of letting go. They govern release. Every exhale is a small act of surrender. You take something in and then you release it. And that is the rhythm of the lungs. And both disgust and sadness are asking you to do exactly that. Let go of what no longer belongs in your system. The difference is in the direction of energy. Sadness pulls inward and downward. It asks you to go deep inside yourself and restructure. Disgust moves outward and upward. It expels, it ejects, it's saying, not this, not now. But here's something worth sitting with. If you feel disgust but cannot fully release it, it stays stuck in your body. Sadness may be underneath. Because sometimes what we are disgusted by is something we thought belonged to us, a person, a belief, a version of ourselves. And when we realize it doesn't, there is grief in that. There is a loss. And the lungs hold both of those truths at the same time. So if you find yourself in a loop of disgust that won't move, don't just push harder to expel it. Ask yourself, is there something here I also need to grieve? Something I thought was mine that I now have to let go of. That is where disgust and sadness meet. And that is where the lungs do their deepest work. If you have chronic lung issues, recurring respiratory problems, tightness in the chest, difficulty breathing deeply, I would invite you to explore both of these emotions. What are you holding that needs to be released? What are you struggling to let go of? What has entered your system that your soul is still trying to expel? It may not be the only answer, but it is worth asking. The goal of working with disgust is not to harden yourself against the world. It is not to build walls so high that nothing can touch you. The goal is to build a core that is so stable, so safe, and so grounded that you can flexibly meet the world, that you can discern in the moment what belongs into your system and what does not, without panic, without rigidity, with clarity. Disgust is your helper in that process. Use it to cleanse, use it to inquire, use it to discover what is truly aligned with you and what needs to leave. Now, how do we actually do this releasing? How do we help the body complete what disgust is asking of it? I want to offer you two layers here, the ritual and the plant world. As I've mentioned before in this series, rituals work neurologically, not just spiritually. They give your nervous system a clear signal. This is complete, this has been released. You don't need to follow any tradition for this. Invent your own. Draw what disgusted you on a paper and burn it. Put the ashes into the earth or water and let them be carried away. Write the name of what needs to leave your system, rub it with salt and wash it off. Whatever feels right to you, that is your ritual. What matters is the conscious intention. I am releasing this. This does not belong in my system. And here's something that I find deeply fascinating because it shows us that humans have always known on some level what disgust is for. In naturopathy and in many traditional herb medicines, there are plants that we specifically used to support the body in vomiting, in physically expelling what did not belong. Emetic plants like ipecac, certain preparations of elderberry or lobelia were used intentionally and carefully by healers to help the body purge what it could not process on its own. This was not seen as a failure of the body. It was seen as a sacred act of cleansing. The body was being supported in doing what it already knew how to do. I'm not recommending you to use emetic plants on your own. Please always work with a knowledgeable practitioner if you explore plant medicine. But I want you to feel the wisdom in this. Our ancestors understood that sometimes the body needs help letting go. And they turned to the earth for that help. That is the same intelligence that disgust carries. The earth has always had tools for release, and so do you. So next time disgust arises in you, don't push it away. Don't shame it. Let it move. Let it do its spiraling, twisting, expelling work. And then ask, what are you protecting me from? What does not belong in my system? Is there grief underneath this? Something I thought was mine that I now need to release? And how can I support my body in completing this release? This is emotional literacy. That is the work. Check in with your lungs, breathe deeply, exhale fully, and trust that your body knows how to let go. It has always known. So we have talked about letting disgust do its job. We have talked about the twisting, expelling motion, the ritual, the plants that support release, the lungs breathing out what no longer belongs. And I want to be very clear with you now because this is important. Releasing is not the goal, it is the beginning. If you feel disgust and you expel it and you move on, you have only done the first half of the work. You have taken out the trash, but you have not yet asked yourself, how did the trash get in here in the first place? And that question, that is where the real transformation lives. Let me give you an example. We talked about the carcass on the side of the road. You feel disgusted. Maybe you even look away. And let's say you do your ritual. You breathe, you release, you let it go. Good. That is step one. But step two is sitting down and asking yourself honestly, what is my relationship with death? Because if the sight of a dead animal, something that is completely natural part of life on this earth, sends your system into a disgust spiral, then something in you has not yet made peace with mortality, with the fact that everything that lives also ends, including you, including the people you love. And that is not a flaw, that is an invitation to evolve your relationship with death, to sit with it, to learn from traditions that have held death as sacred, not something to be hidden away in hospitals and funeral homes, but something to be witnessed, honored, and integrated. The disgust was pointing you there. The release just cleared enough space for you to be able to look. Or take the example of sexual energy directed at you without your consent. You feel disgust, you expel it. Good! That boundary was healthy and right. But then, after the release, you sit with it and you ask, what is my relationship with sexuality, with my own body, with being seen as a sexual being? Maybe the disgust was purely about the violation of your boundary, and that is completely valid. But maybe there's also something underneath. Maybe sexuality itself still carries shame for you. Maybe your body still does not feel like a safe place to inhabit fully. Maybe you were taught that desire is dangerous or dirty or something to be controlled. The disgust showed you the door, now you walk through it. This is what I mean when I say disgust is one of the most evolutionary, powerful emotions we have. Not because it protects us in the moment, though it does, but because if we are willing to follow it all the way through, it shows us exactly where we have not yet grown, where our consciousness has a ceiling, where life is asking us to expand. Every time something disgusts you, there is a question hidden inside it. Is this truly not for me? Or is this something I have not yet learned to meet? And sometimes the answer is both. Sometimes something can be genuinely harmful to your system and be pointing you toward an area of growth at the same time. The work is learning to tell the difference and then doing something about it. So the full process of disgust looks like this. First, feel it. Don't suppress it. Let the twisting, expelling motion do its work. Then support the release. Use ritual, use breath, use the wisdom of plants if that calls to you. And then turn around and look at what just left. Ask yourself, what was that showing me? What part of life am I not yet in full relationship with? What do I need to learn, to heal, to evolve, so that next time I can meet this with more wholeness? That is not a quick process. It may take time. It might take returning to it again and again in the spiral way that deep emotional work moves. But that is the work. That is what it means to be emotionally literate, not just feel and release, but to grow from what you felt. Your disgust is not just protecting you, it is teaching you. Let it. I see you in the next video. Like and follow so you don't miss it.